Comfort zones. Are they more like a warm, comfy blanket or like chains attaching you to a wall? Let's talk about it. It's time to get fed.
I'm JB, master presenter, former Fortune 50 sales executive, and your guide for everything sales and productivity.
I'm the doctor, Dr. Andre Caruso, a clinical psychologist and your resident expert in behavior, mindset, and wellness.
We hope you're hungry.
It's time to get fed by JB and the doctor. Welcome to the Get Fed podcast. I'm your host today, the doctor, Dr. Andre Caruso, and we are excited to have you here about to get fed. Before we get started, do me the favor, hit the like, subscribe, follow, share, 5-star rating, all those awesome things that we truly appreciate. Can't do it without your support, and we truly, truly appreciate it. So thank you for helping us out. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about comfort zones. And are they a good thing or are they a bad thing? And something I used to say on the podcast a long time ago, that pretty much anytime JB asked me a question, my answer would be, it depends. But that sounded too much like an adult diaper, so I've changed it a lot around. And actually, my favorite thing to say these days is more than one thing is true at the same time. And I think this is a perfect example as we talk about comfort zones, because there's some benefits to comfort zones, but there's also some distractions and distractors to it. So more than one thing is true depending on your situation. And let's talk a little bit about that. So a comfort zone, what do we kind of do? We get the idea of a comfort zone is feeling that safety, feeling that basically comfort, that we are in a place that we don't have to worry about anything. We're used to it. We're familiar. We're comfortable. And sometimes that's good. A lot of times that's good. We want to feel comfortable, right? We want to feel safe. We want to feel that we know what's going to happen and then we're prepared for it. Our brain sets us up for that, right? Part of our fight or flight is not wanting to be activated is when we know we're in a safe space. But the flip side of that too is we sometimes rest on our laurels and we get too comfortable that we don't push ourselves to try something new and facing change. Now, what I always say about change, everyone likes the idea of change until it's actually time to make the change, and they're not a big fan of it. But generally afterwards, once the change is complete or at least in motion, people are much happier again, right? So you just kind of have to get through that challenging part to make the change. And the idea of change is definitely scary. So if we think about that with comfort zones, facing the fear of change, but also knowing that sometimes we have to push ourselves past things, this is where you get my idea of more than one thing is true in this situation, right? So let's talk about both sides of it. When is it good to challenge those comfort zones and push through it? Well, if you want to try something new, if you want to experience something, if you're feeling stagnant, if you're stuck in your business, especially, it's time to push past that comfort zone and try some stuff. Now, it could work, it could fail. Doesn't really matter. You have to try it to see what happens. And as you know how I feel about failing, there's really no way that we can, because all we're doing is what? Collecting more data. So it's never really a failure. It's just part of the experiment where we're collecting new data. So it's good to push our past those things. We have to try things that make us a little bit uncomfortable as long as we're doing it within a safe space, right? When I say by safe is you just don't want to injure yourself. You don't want to hurt yourself. I think those are those differences that we get caught up in, right? I should try something, but not if it's going to actually physically or mentally injure us, because then we might want to figure out another way to go about it. That doesn't mean a little pain isn't okay. For example, if you've been following me on any kind of social media, you've seen I started rucking with great influence from my business partner, JB. He's been doing that for a long time. I know I'm not running, so I was trying to figure out a way to do something a little bit different when I take my walks and to get in my cardio. So that's what I tried. Tell you what, it is definitely out of my comfort zone. It's not the most comfortable thing to wear, wearing weights around your shoulders and then going for a walk. But guess what? Once you push through a little bit of that pain, there's a lot of benefits to it. So I had to step out of my comfort zone. But I've also been someone who's dealt with chronic pain for many, many years, and I just thought that's the way it's supposed to be. So I was uncomfortable. And as my physical therapist will tell you, the great Dr. Rand, if you're local, you know her. she'll always say that sometimes you shouldn't be feeling this much pain, right? Like you should feel better. And when you're just so accustomed to it, you don't think you can. So that's the difference between some temporary pain to push past a comfort zone and actually being injured and wanting to get some help for it, right? So we can see that there's two different realms on what we have to look to. So we need to make sure it's not an injury. We just want to make sure that just it's some short-lived pain that we just might have to push through. And that pain could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be mental. We just have to understand that it's something that's short-lived, it's something that's temporary, that's something that's not injurious, and that's actually going to affect our lives going forward. So that's a very important factor on what getting out of those comfort zones and being uncomfortable is knowing what you're doing to yourself is for your benefit and not necessarily something that's going to cause you injury or permanent pain. So once we get past that, we can see comfort zones should be challenged from time to time, probably more times than not, if we're someone especially who's used to just kind of being stagnant and resting on our laurels. So we look to make sure that it's not something that's going to be injurious. We push past. I know what you're saying, Doc. That sounds great. It's still challenging, right? It is still hard to push out of that comfort zone to actually try the thing. What do we do is the fear, the anxiety that we build up, and that's what anxiety really is. The actual definition is the fear of the unknown. So once we start to experience it, it's no longer anxiety, and it becomes fear, nervousness, frustration, all kinds of other emotions. So don't get caught up too much on that anxiety piece. I think that's something we talk about way too much or label way too much when it's not actually what it is. But how do we get past that, right? We push past it. And you've heard me say, you've read it in plenty of books. Atomic Habits talks about it. Just try making a little adjustments at a time. We don't need to redo everything and create this whole new person in 5 minutes. We need to just try a little bit of things and see which ones work. Because that's the other thing we need to do. We need to figure out what's going to work best for us. So we make some small adjustments. And that's how you start to push yourself out of your comfort zone, right? You make a small adjustment, you push yourself a little bit, you see how you react to it. A lot of times we find, oh, we can do it. And then we push through it and we do it. And then we start to get a little bit of that experience. It's a good reinforcer for us to keep pushing through it. So the best advice on a lot of this is, or some advice on a lot of this is just give it a shot. Push yourself just a tad bit. Don't try to go crazy. A lot of times that's what we do is we go to extremes, right? Like we're not doing anything, then we're going to do everything. So we go for walks, but never wore a pack. So if I decided I was going to go for a 26-mile marathon my first time out there, it's probably not going to end well for me. But what I know is I can used to doing 2 miles. So the first time, let me go out there and do a mile. And then I can work my way back up to 2 miles with the pack. And then I can push myself from there and keep moving forward. That's just one example that I'm giving you on this way to kind of think about it. So one technique, just give it a try a little bit at a time and see what happens. Let me go to the flip side on here on why comfort zones, more than one thing is true, could actually be a good thing from time to time as well. Comfort zones provide what I was saying earlier is that sense of safety, that sense of well-being, that sense of understanding and knowing. So we want to have some spaces that are our comfort zones. We don't want to go too crazy on pushing those boundaries in some of those places. We want to have those places that we can just relax, that we could just find things that we're good at, or we can find things that we enjoy, or we can find some things that just offer us that comfort, hence comfort zones, right? So in those senses, they're very good. It's good for our mental well-being. It's good for our self-care. So for example, if you know you should, or you need a break every few hours to keep yourself sane, and that is your comfort zone. Sure, you could try to push yourself past that, but at what point is it actually becoming detrimental? So if you know, just throwing a random example out there, that if I work for 3 hours, I need to take a break. If I don't take a lunch break at that 3 hours, or a drink break, water break, bathroom, if I don't take any kind of break during that time, I am less efficient. And I start to spiral, or I start to lose interest, or I start to lose focus, which the reality shows, if you listened to us before, we really should be breaking that down even more. But say you found your sweet spot. Now you could push yourself out of that comfort zone and say, I'm going to work for 4 hours. But what happens then, you become less effective. you put yourself under a stress, and you're not going to concentrate the same way. You're not going to be as accomplished as you would if you just took your break like you normally would inside of that comfort zone of yours. Then you come back and you do the work, and you can push forward. Could also be a place like if you know your couch is something that offers you comfort, and there's some days I really just need to sit down on the couch and watch a movie or catch up on a show and just give myself an hour or so just to kind of really relax. A couple hours, 10 hours. There's really no judgment around it. It's finding what works best for you within reason of keeping you sane and keeping you finding that balance. So as you can see, there's different ways to look at it. There's positives and there's negatives around pretty much anything we do. We can find pros and cons to it. We can find reasons why it would work and not work, because more than one thing is true in these senses. And that is definitely true about comfort zones. So I want to kind of think about that. How do you use your comfort zones? Do you rely on too many? And does it keep you stagnant, keep you from evolving? Do you have some that are very valuable for you that you need to protect at all cost? I'm going to say yes, probably for most of you on both of those. So challenge yourself. When do I want to protect a comfort zone? When do I want to push myself past it and see what kind of benefit I can get from it? It's trial and error. A lot of things like we talk about, it's really just going through the experience. Each person's different. Each one's going to have their own comfort zones, and have to start identifying for yourself which ones you want to push past and which ones you should retain. The great part about that is you really, because it's your own zone, doesn't mean you can't get help around that. So you can enlist a coach, you can enlist a friend, a therapist, a workout buddy, a business partner, whatever it may be. Enlist somebody that you can run these ideas past that can help keep you accountable to try some of these things, but just set that tone that you know that you're going to try to figure out what works best for you. So don't be afraid to try it. Don't be afraid to enlist some assistance. Challenge yourself on the comfort zones that you should be. Embrace the ones that you should also be. And let me know how you're doing. As you know, I'd love to hear from you all. The best way to do that is to reach out for me. You can slide into our DMs. Always love to hear from you. You can look at it on all our social medias at JB and the Doctor, or on our website, jbandthedoctor.com or evolveandthrive.com. You can find me on all my social media at Dr. Andre Caruso, including LinkedIn, Instagram, all the fun places. You know where to find me. Or you can just message me through the apps here on YouTube, whatever it may be. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Please share, rate, and subscribe and all those wonderful things for us. And we'll catch you down the road on the next one. I hope you enjoyed getting fed this week. Peace out, yo.